A radiant personality. This is a continued talk, an account by Sri Dilip Kumar Roy after having seen Sri Aurobindo, which was published in the book Among the Great by Dilip Kumar Roy, Jaico Books, 1950, pages 208 to 30. This decided me. I wanted to draw him out further. I would ask you to bear with me a little. I made bold to say, and give me a patient hearing. My difficulty is that I have lived and loved life amply, and I believe intensely. But in my boyhood, I came under the influence of Sri Ramakrishna's mysticism. As a result, this certitude germinated in my mind that he had touched the bedrock of truth with the categorical assertion that the object of human living is to achieve divine union, in single quotes. Then I went on to say, in double quotes, I fell within the orbit of the Western this worldliness with all its spell and glamour and romance, luxuriating in living and in making the most of life and nature. I did not stop to think that the wealth of sunshine might have a worthier message for us than that of goading us to make a few paltry pleasures of hay. I made haste to snatch what I could before the shadows closed in. In my own case, however, they crept in even before sunset, for my vital enthusiasm waned quickly, and the old starry perception of my boyhood re-emerged. It said in clear accents, "It isn't any of these. Wealth or youth, fame or family, action or art. No, not even service to the community or country, but only the divine. Nothing but his unique touch that can impart significance to it all. Since he is the sole reality, all rest is a mimicry, a shadow dance." On my return from Europe, I continued, I became popular and made friends, numerous friends, thanks to my patrimony, musical gifts, social qualities, and lastly, the pathetic awe and esteem that people feel when you talk glibly about continental culture in continental languages. But strangely enough, among my numerous friends, I met none interested in God or things of the spirit, unless diluted with big doses of colored art and popular humanism, with the sole exception of Ronald Nixon, an English professor of Lucknow. Thus, it was a foreigner who discussed with me the wisdom of our authentic spirituality. It was he who first told me about your great yogic stature and made me read your books. Since meeting him, my old nostalgia for the spiritual life has reasserted itself with redoubled force, and I cannot rest in peace without the inner harmony which only the Spirit can give. In other words, I want to practice yoga. But then, here I have the deepest misgivings as to my capacity. And I have had this persistent feeling that I can never succeed without a guru, and that guru must be no other than yourself, even though I don't know whether you will accept me. This is my position. But the trouble is that life too calls me with her colored lanterns, as you must have inferred yourself from my questions regarding social give and take, sympathy, love, friendship, etc., with all their attendant obligations and responsibilities. To stake all that for something that has not yet crystallized in my consciousness. Or maybe that the dilemma lies in this, that the satisfaction that these social pleasures give, though fast dwindling, are yet too tangible to be dismissed out of hand. Anyhow, the prospect of having to do without my chains causes a strange malaise. I say strange because I can't quite account for the tug of war that is going on within me. A conflict which is quite concrete even when the forces seem so imponderable. But I don't know if I have been able to put it all clearly before you. I paused as he smiled kindly, his deep glance spraying a kind of peace upon me, giving me a feeling of his compassion, not a mere human compassion, but something far more pervasive and soothing. I quite understand, he said reassuringly. It is like this. Human society, human friendship, love, affection, fellow feeling are mostly and usually, not entirely, or in all cases, founded on a vital basis and are ego-held at their center. It is because of the pleasure of being loved, the pleasure of enlarging the ego by contact and penetration with another, the exhilaration of the vital interchange which feeds their personality, that men usually love. And there are also other and still more selfish motives that mix with this essential movement. There are, of course, higher spiritual, psychic, mental, vital elements that can come in. But the whole thing is very mixed, even at its best. This is the reason why, at a certain stage, with or without apparent reason, the world and life and human society and philanthropy, which is as ego-ridden as the rest, begin to pall. There is sometimes, he continued, an ostensible reason, a disappointment of the surface vital, the withdrawal of affection by others, the perception that those loved, or men generally, are not what one thought them to be, and a host of other causes. But often the cause is a secret disappointment of some part of the inner being, not translated or not well translated into the mind, because it expected from these thinks something they cannot give. For some, it takes the form of a vairagya, which drives them towards ascetic indifference and gives the urge towards moksha. For us, what we hold to be necessary is that the mixture should disappear and that the consciousness should be established on a pure level. Till then, he went on after a pause, love and affection and sympathy and friendship could not yield to us their full quota in significance and joy, because for that their basis has to be spiritual, their foundation pure. But for such a consummation, there must be a transmutation of the very substance of our human nature. It is only then that the rhythm and mode of its self-expression can change, when the lead will have been taken by the psychic self in us. When this self of ours comes to the forefront, it will express in the truest way the authentic movements of the deeper emotions which are of the psychic. This is, in a nutshell, the inner message of my yoga. Next, Dilip Kumar writes in the footnote, Sri Aurobindo wrote to me later, explaining the action of the psychic. In quotes, the psychic is the soul, the divine spark animating matter and life and mind, and as it grows, it takes form and expresses itself through these, touching them to beauty and fineness. It works even before humanity in the lower creation, leading it up towards the human. In humanity, it works more freely, though still under a mass of ignorance and weakness and coarseness and hardness, leading it up towards the divine. In yoga, it becomes conscious of its aim and turns inward to the divine. It sees behind and above it. That is the difference. Affection, love, tenderness are in their nature psychic. The vital has them because the psychic is trying to express itself through the vital. It is through the emotional being that the psychic most easily expresses itself. It stands just behind it in the heart center, but it wants these things to be pure. Not that it rejects the outward expression through the vital and the physical, but as the psychic being is from the soul, it naturally feels the attraction of soul to soul, the nearness of soul to soul, the union of soul with soul as the things that are to it most abiding and concrete. Mind, vital, body are means of expression and very precious means of expression. But the inner life is, for it, the first thing, the deepest reality, and these have to be subordinated to it and conditioned by it. Its expression, its instrument and channel. Then Sri Aurobindo added, consequently, this must be the ideal, your ideal. That is, if you would practice yoga, bearing in mind that you mustn't be bound by anything that is irrelevant to your aspiration for the divine. Nothing, no attachment, however laudable, must be a rival to your aspiration for the divine. But is that possible? I mean, feasible for me? Sri Aurobindo said, not at the start. If it were, you would be a liberated being already. You can't achieve liberation overnight. What I wanted to stress was that if you cared for yoga, you must always hold on to your vision, your ideal of inner liberation, so that you may be ready to comply whenever you are called upon to forego anything that militates against this ideal. To be continued.